All right, guys, what's up? Today's video, we're going to talk about jump skiing versus rail skiing. What's harder? What's cooler? What's better? What do we prefer? What do you guys prefer? That's the main question. I mean, when it really comes down to it, we got one thing over here, we got one thing over here. They come together, they make this beautiful sport called freestyle skiing. But today I do want to discuss this because I got a comment from you guys and they're like, make a video on rail skiing versus jump skiing. So I'm going to do it. Jump skiing is off a jump. You freaking launch. We're either starting off doing our first 360s, backflips, 720s, or we're getting into things like double, corks, 14s, triples, all this big stuff, right? And then rails, you know, you're sliding your first rail, you're sliding your first box, you're just gliding on that nice piece of metal, or you're doing massive spins in, landing on it, bouncing off it, doing pretzels, or you're doing like super steezy hand drags, or you're hitting urban rail. Lots of possibilities with everything. Let's dive into jumps first. So jumps first, in my opinion, are, I don't want to say they're my favorite. I really like jumps. Just from personal experience and from what I've seen in the sport, the risk of injury is a little bit higher in jumps. It just is. No matter what you do, jumping is going to have more impact than rails. The possibility of landing on your head or a part of your body that, you know, can cause serious permanent damage is higher on jumps. It just is. But with that being said, obviously there's awful injuries on rails and stuff as well. But with jumps, it's just a little bit higher, especially when you start doing bigger tricks because you're adding more spins and flips and stuff like that, and just a little bit more things that can go wrong. Jumps, you have a lot of possibilities. You can go forward, switch, natural, and there's a lot of different ways you can add flavor to jumps. And jumps doesn't have to just be a jump off of like a normal jump. A jump could be off the knuckle, like where you're doing nose butters off knuckles and stuff like that. This is where the line between jumps versus rails kind of gets blurred because you can kind of, you know, do jump tricks off of rails, you can do jump tricks onto rails, and vice versa, right? You can kind of you can't really do rail tricks on jumps, but you can bring in things like nose butters and stuff on jumps where it's kind of crossing the line of what's possible on both. I personally like jumps more just because it scares me a little bit. I really like rails. Rails are really fun, but they can be so frustrating sometimes. I find jumps are a little less frustrating when it comes to trying to get a trick. Like, there's not necessarily a jump trick where you're like battling it for 100 plus tries, trying to make it perfect, trying to get it perfect. It's one of those things that takes like 4 or 5 tries and you kind of get it. And then you move on to the next, or you just keep doing the same trick over and over again. And there's also something amazing about that feeling of falling out of the sky on a jump, right? Whereas a rail, you don't really get that feeling. However, rails, let's say rails, for instance, you do have this kind of challenge aspect where the most part, like when you're doing rails, you're trying to do a trick that like is going to push you. If you're going to be good at skiing, you're going to be doing a trick that's pushing you. If you're doing the same trick over and over again, you're not getting better. You're not progressing and you're not pushing yourself to where you want to be or where you should be going. It's okay if your whole goal in skiing is just to cruise and have fun. But if you do want to get better, you should be doing rail tricks that get very frustrating. Jump tricks, it never really gets to that frustration point where you're just like, like I've had enough of this stupid rail, like I'm over it. I've hit this 60 times and I still haven't got the trick. Like I'm going in the chalet, I'm taking a massive shit and I'm calling it a day. I'm going home, like I'm done. Rails don't really get to that point, or jumps don't really get to that point. Rails do. So I'm gonna say jumps for me. I just love the feeling of jumping. The frustration level is a little bit lower for me, and there's something more like just people gravitate towards jumps more. So from attention standpoint, my ego loves attention, and people love jumps. So I mean, I kind of gravitate more towards that. But for rails, for instance, if you're a creative person, if you're jumps, there's a lot of creativity too. But I feel like for creativity on rails, it's just another level of creativity. Like if you're somebody that's an artist or somebody that just likes to really express themselves, rails and rail features, jib features are for you. It's just something that like you can, there's so many different ways to approach a rail, a box, a tube. If you watch Andy Perry ski boxes or rails, it's completely different. It's mind blowing what this guy comes up with, what this guy can do on a box. Like I will have never thought of doing that on a box. I'll think of doing the textbook like comp tricks or like 2P4s or like, you know, a couple switch ups, maybe a 4 out or something on a box, but there is no way in hell I'm doing his crazy little blind soul things or anything like that. Not that like if I didn't spend the time I couldn't figure it out. It just, I don't have the creativity to learn it like that, to think of these tricks, to think of these ideas. You look at somebody like Regan Wallace, who's an amazing rail skier, and he's got really creative ideas for all these features. It kind of depends on your personality. But if you want to be creative, you want to do crazy tricks, you want to scare yourself, you want to battle these features, rail skiing's for you. Because you have people like Alex Hackle, you have people like The Bunch, and you see that maybe they're not doing the biggest tricks on jumps, but the creativity and the difficulty they bring to rails equals that. So I would say jumps versus rails. Jumps is for somebody that likes to maybe scare themselves a little bit more. They're like more into like just doing big things just for the adrenaline rush of doing really big tricks and just scaring themselves. And then rails is more for the creative person who wants to express themselves and do things that are unique and still have that challenge aspect and still learn new things and still push themselves in a more creative style than as opposed to a more like aggressive, like scare myself, holy shit style. And anyways, that's what I think about rails. That's what I think about jumps and rails. And let me know what you guys think. What do you like more, jumps or rails? I like jumps. I love rails too, but I'm gonna put jumps here and rails here. So yeah, with that being said, this is the YouTube video, guys. If you guys want to get coached by me this winter season, you can download the free course down below for Slope Academy, and we will have spots opening up for Black Friday. It's going to be 50% off for 5 people, so absolutely do not miss that for Black Friday. It's going to be the deal of a lifetime. And I will see you in the next YouTube video, guys. Deuces.